It is well known that Lindsey Graham has established herself as a leading figure among Republican senators in the U.S. Graham has maintained his relevance and influence despite his frequent coalition changes by virtue of his forthright and frequently contentious personality. The real details of Graham's personal life and relationships, however, are under-discussed. However, before we delve into it, how about we take a brief look at the senator from South Carolina? Little Lindsey Graham had it tough growing up in the segregated South Carolina, where she was born on July 9, 1955. As a child, he shared a home in the rear of their restaurant bar, the Sanitary Cafe, with his sister Millie and his parents, Florence and James Graham. The patrons and employees of a neighboring mill factory had to share the loo because of this. After some time, the family uprooted to a caravan and then to a neighboring house. To assist with the family's financial hardships, Graham started racking tables at the basement pool club when he was 12 years old. Since he was the first child in his family to work and live in the pub, Graham had to mature fast to handle all of the obligations. But it also put him in danger-prone situations at a young age. He was responsible for fielding calls from worried women who wanted to speak with their intoxicated husbands. On top of all that, young Graham saw firsthand the consequences of segregation. Although approximately 20% of Central's population is black, the pub still wouldn't serve black patrons beer. He was profoundly affected by this prejudice throughout his childhood years. Graham wasn't known for having perfect grades when he was in high school. Actually, he had low grades, but it didn't dampen his ambition. He once made the kids in his class laugh out loud when he informed his instructor he wanted to be governor someday. Many would have written off Graham's chances of attending college after he graduated from Daniel High School with a SAT score of 800 out of 1,600. However, he remained resolute. He became the first in his family to go to college after receiving admission to USC. While Graham was a university student, he got a call telling him to return home immediately. His mother was fighting an advanced stage of Hodgkin's cancer when he arrived, and she was in awful health. Despite their best efforts, she did not survive the hasty journey to the hospital. Not long after that, Graham got another devastating call. While he was sleeping, his 13-year-old sister discovered his body, which had suffered a severe heart attack. Graham became his sister's legal guardian after the death of both of their parents. Through his service, he was able to keep his studies at USC in Columbia, allowing him to remain near to home and take care of her. Following his 1982 graduation from the USC School of Law, Graham immediately entered active service by enlisting in the U.S. Air Force as a Judge Advocate General's Court's attorney. He was originally stationed at Rhein-Main Air Base in Frankfurt, Germany, after serving as an Air Force defense attorney. He was the head prosecutor for the Air Force in Europe from 1984 until 1988. At the time, he was defending a military pilot who had been suspected of marijuana usage. The event aired on 60 Minutes and revealed that the Air Force had defective drug testing protocols. Returning to South Carolina, Graham spent some time in Europe. After his military service ended in 1989, he went into private practice law. Between 1990 to 1994, he was the city attorney for Central, and from 1988 to 1992, he was the assistant county attorney for Oconee County. Graham enlisted in the South Carolina Air National Guard in 1989 after his discharge from the Air Force. He remained there until 1995 before transferring to the United States Air Force Reserve. Nevertheless, he was called to active duty as a judge advocate at McEntire Air National Guard Station in eastern South Carolina during the 1990 to 1991 Gulf War, where he briefed pilots on the laws of war as they were about to leave. Graham received 2 promotions in the United States Air Force Reserve, one to lieutenant colonel in 1998 and another to colonel in 2004, the latter of which was ceremonially presented by President George W. Bush at the White House. Graham was involved in a minor legal dispute that same year. Initially, Graham's dual role as a senator and military judge was upheld by the lower court. It was unlawful for him to hold both jobs simultaneously, according to a 2006 verdict by the Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. During 2007, Graham served as a reservist on active service in Iraq for 2 brief periods, one in April and the other in August. During these periods, he focused on matters related to detainees and the rule of law. However, he continued beyond that. In August 2009, while the Senate was on vacation, he continued his service in Afghanistan. He never formally assumed his position as senior instructor at the Judge Advocate General School, despite his subsequent assignment to that position. For his distinguished work as a senior Air Force legal advisor in Iraq and Afghanistan, Graham was presented with the Bronze Star in 2014. He oversaw the confinement of military captives from August 2009 till July 2014. Graham served in the Air Force for more than 33 years, and in 2015 he retired as a colonel, having attained the rank-mandated retirement age of 60. He was ineligible to get a military pay check while serving in the federal government, thus he did not draw one during his tenure as a senator and congressman. Both Graham's political career, which began in 1994, and his rise through the ranks of the Air Force were booming at the same time. It was in that year that Graham spotted a window of opportunity that would allow him to fulfill a lifelong ambition of his. Even while it wasn't the governorship he had hoped for, it was still a great improvement. Democratic U.S. Representative Butler Derrick had been serving South Carolina's 3rd Congressional District for 20 years when he decided to retire. Graham, seeing his opportunity, fired up his performance. Graham worked tirelessly to get support from voters thanks to a combination of drive and chance. The combination of his combat experience and his intense drive made him stand out. He entered the election to succeed Derrick with the support of Republican U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond. Graham received 52% of the vote in the Republican primary, surpassing his opponents Bob Cantrell 33% and Ed Allgood 15%. Democratic State Senator James Bryan, Jr. was Graham's opponent in the general election. The margin of victory was narrow, with 60% of the vote going to Graham and 40% to Bryan. The Republican Revolution that year included this victory. This would make Graham the first Republican to hold the seat in Congress since 1877. Debbie Dorn, who was born into a prominent political family, was Graham's opponent in 1996. Her father, William Jennings Bryan Dorn, was a long-serving congressman, and her niece was Butler Derrick. In spite of the odds, Graham was able to get 60% of the vote and retain his seat, while Dorn received 40%. In 1998, 2 years later, Graham easily secured a 3rd term. He won easily since he faced no opposition. Graham faced off against Democrat George Breitharp in 2000, marking his return to the political sphere. The campaign was close, but Graham's popularity never wavered, and he easily won a 4th term with 68% of the vote, leaving Breitharp in the dust with 30%. When the illustrious U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond chose to retire in 2002, Lindsey Graham sensed it was his chance. He unexpectedly breezed through the Republican primary in his bid to replace Thurmond. But the true fight was in the general election against Alex Sanders, who had previously served as Chief Judge of the South Carolina Court of Appeals and as President of the College of Charleston. Sanders had an impressive CV. However, Graham's campaign never let up. With 600,010 votes to Sanders' 487,359, or 54% of the vote, Graham easily won the election. Sanders received 44%. More than just a political triumph, this was a watershed moment in history. Following Fritz Hollings's 1966 retirement, Graham became the first South Carolinian to serve as a U.S. Senator. The 2008 campaign by Graham for a 2nd term was when things really started to heat up. South Carolina Republican Party National Executive Committeeman Buddy Witherspoon was his main opponent. Contrary to expectations, he managed to secure a substantial victory, receiving 186,398 votes compared to Witherspoon's 92,547. This equates to 66.82% of the vote versus 33.18%. Graham nearly won all one of South Carolina's 46 counties. Things were different in the general election. The Democratic nominee, pilot and engineer Bob Conley, was Graham's opponent. Graham ran a formidable campaign, even though Conley came from an impressive background. Graham won handily with 1,076,534 votes to Connolly's 790,621, giving him 57.53% on Election Day, after spending an astounding $6.6 million on his campaign, in contrast to Connolly's $15,000. When it comes to winning elections, Graham had it quite simple until 2014. On the other hand, he was seen as one of the most vulnerable re-electing Republicans that year. His reputation for collaborating and compromising with Democrats, along with his poor approval ratings, made him an easy target for a primary challenge. Many in the conservative movement, notably those involved with the Tea Party, were anxious to depose him. Club for Growth President Chris Chokla went so far as to say that his group might support a primary challenger should a formidable candidate arise. Nobody really wanted to beat Graham, and most people thought he would easily win. This was mainly because of his excellent maneuvering abilities and his fearless reaction to any threats. Graham became friends with members of the state's congressional delegation who may run against him, and he assisted them financially and got them on committees they wanted to be on. Additionally, he organized a massive political apparatus called the Graham Machine, which consisted of 6 statewide regional offices, a network of thousands of paid and unpaid workers, and more than 5,000 precinct captains. Graham flooded South Carolina with positive advertisements and accumulated an enormous campaign war fund. His appeal was bolstered by his focus on constituent services and local issues. Graham stood firm against the Tea Party and its adherents, saying that Republicans should be more welcoming of diverse perspectives rather than trying to win them over. On the cusp of the Republican primary, his efforts started to bear fruit, and his approval ratings shot up at the same time. On Election Day, he swept the board, defeating his closest opponent, State Senator Lee Bright, who managed only 48,904 votes, or 15.4% of the total. Graham persisted in his controversial bid for senator and was elected to serve the entire term. And he started considering a presidential bid in 2014. A year and a half later, he decided to pursue his lifelong ambition twice over and run for president in 2016. Unlike the Senate elections, he had more difficulty this time around. Among the several Republican contenders, Lindsey's polling numbers were so low that they required a magnifying glass to be legible. Donald Trump and other powerful individuals were in his way. As a result, his campaign was doomed to failure from the start. He continued to take aim at Trump whenever he had the opportunity, though. First of all, he absolutely despised Trump for his outrageous behavior and style. In contrast to Graham's more conventional, well-mannered style, Trump's speech was more impromptu and impulsive. He frequently made his point by pointing out the ridiculousness of Trump's policy proposals through the use of humor and sarcasm. On other occasions, though, he was quite blunt, even telling Trump to go to hell and describing him as a religious bigot. Naturally, Trump always has a way to clap back. At a news conference, he went so far as to read out Graham's number. Graham quickly assessed the situation, realized he was going nowhere, and on December 21, 2015, he decided to end his presidential campaign. Curiously, Graham's stance took a total turn for the worst once Trump was elected president. His meeting with Trump in March 2017 was unexpectedly productive. Graham was so satisfied that he gave Trump his new phone number. They started going on regular golf outings together in October 2017. As if they were old friends, Graham gushed over their first golf outing after previously calling Trump a lunatic and unfit for government. Graham made it known in April 2018 that he would support Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. This was an astonishing change for someone who had been so critical of Trump in the 2016 primaries. Graham remained loyal to Trump even after every major news network had written off Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee for president in 2020. That was not the end of his alliance. He made an appearance at the first of Trump's 2024 campaign primetime rallies on January 28, 2023. He reiterated his backing for Trump during an appearance on Fox News with Sean Hannity. Both of Graham's parents died within 15 months of each other, leaving him and his sister Darlene without parents at the ages of 13 and 22, respectively. Graham helped raise Darlene. One of the most difficult things that happened to him was losing both of his parents and then having to take on the role of a parent to his sister. It was extremely tough for a 22-year-old to carry such a huge burden, despite his profound love for Darlene. Having gone through this, though, they became quite close. They were practically one and the same. He cared about showing voters his softer side, so much so that Darlene wanted to accompany him on the campaign trail, often during his 2015 presidential campaign. She hoped that by being there she could bring attention to the compassionate side of his character that the general public may overlook. Lindsey Graham's romantic history is mostly shrouded in mystery. Not because he's unusually tight-lipped, but because thus far nothing noteworthy has happened. Debbie was his girlfriend when he was in law school, but they broke up. Carol, a fellow JAG officer who dated him while he was stationed in Germany, subsequently became a member of Colin Powell's staff. But there was a passionate love affair with an air hostess named Sylvia that nearly ended in marriage. Graham fell in love and then broke it off in the space of a year while stationed at a German air post. Her mother's advanced age prevented her from moving to South Carolina, and Graham had no intention of remaining in Germany, thus the relationship came to an end. Therefore, they dispersed despite the possibility of reuniting. But there has been scandal in Graham's life as well. In 2020, things became heated when Sean Harding, an openly gay adult film star, made a bombshell accusation on Twitter. He used the hashtag #LadyG, which he claimed was Graham's nickname among male sex workers, to suggest that Lindsey Graham was gay. The accusation rekindled long-running speculations over Graham's personal life and turned social media into a frenzy. Someone mentioned that Graham had been seen in homosexual clubs and was in a relationship with someone of the same sex. It was ironic because he had taken a lot of fire in October 2010 for standing up to those who were against gay marriage. Even though Graham's romantic life has been silent, he has always dismissed the claims and made it plain that he is straight. Understandably, Graham's residence is not publicly known because of privacy and security concerns. The only thing we know about him is that he lives in Seneca, SC. Situated in Oconee County, a charming little town in the state's northwestern region, close to Lake Kiowas and the Blue Ridge Mountains, is Seneca. The combination of suburban and rural elements in his Seneca neighborhood is indicative of the area's personality. It's the ideal spot for those who value tranquility while still being close to nature and community facilities. Among Graham's major holdings is an office block in Seneca, South Carolina, which is 10,000 square feet in size. In 2007, he paid $2.5 million for this piece of land. Having said that, the building's worth has risen steadily over the years and is now estimated to be approximately $4 million. A one-story brick townhome in Washington, D.C., measuring 254 square feet, is another noteworthy property. In 1997, he paid $225,000 for this townhouse. This home's value has skyrocketed just like his prior investments and is thought to be worth approximately $800,000. While he is gone from his house in Seneca, Graham resides in this townhome in the nation's capital. Its prime location makes it easy for him to juggle his duties as a legislator with a pleasant place to live.